One that I pray will open your eyes to the battle that rages around us. You may not see it, but make no mistake, it is real. There is a war for your soul, a battle between good and evil, between light and darkness. There is a battle raging in the world today, though many do not see it. It is not fought with swords or guns, nor is it confined to battlefields or political arenas. It is an unseen war, a spiritual war, and every single one of us is caught in the middle of it. This is a battle between good and evil, between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. Whether we acknowledge it or not, this war is happening all around us, and its outcome affects every aspect of our life. From the very beginning of time, this battle has been waged. It began when Satan, in his pride, rebelled against God and was cast down from heaven. Since that moment, the enemy has sought to oppose everything that is good, everything that is holy, and everything that belongs to God. His mission has never changed. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He is constantly working to deceive, to tempt, and to turn people away from the truth. His tactics are subtle, and his strategies are designed to make people doubt the existence of the very battle they are in. Many people go through life unaware of this war. They dismiss the idea of spiritual forces, believing that what they see with their eyes is all there is. They explain away evil as mere human nature, as psychological struggles, or as the result of social and economic factors. But the truth is, the spiritual realm is just as real as the physical world we live in. What happens in the unseen world has a direct impact on our lives, our families, and our future. The enemy does not need permission to attack those who remain blind to his schemes. In fact, his greatest weapon is deception, making people believe that he does not exist, that there is no danger, and that there is no need to fight. This battle is not just about personal struggles. It is evident in the corruption of societies, in the moral decay of cultures, and in the way truth is twisted and redefined. It is seen in the attacks on faith, in the spread of violence and the promotion of sin, and in the destruction of families. The enemy has infiltrated entertainment, education, politics, and even some religious institutions, distorting truth and leading many astray. Everywhere you look, there are signs of this war. Hearts growing cold, minds filled with confusion, and lives being torn apart by addiction, depression, and hopelessness. But just as there is an enemy, there is also a greater power at work. God has not left his people defenseless. He has given us the weapons to stand firm and fight. He has provided his word, his spirit, and his authority. Those who trust in him are not alone in this battle. Though the forces of darkness may rise, they cannot overcome the light of God. The enemy's power is limited and his defeat is certain. But the battle still rages and we must be aware of it. Many people unknowingly open doors to the enemy through their choices, through the things they allow into their lives and through the compromises they make. They invite darkness into their homes through what they watch, what they listen to, and what they engage in. They become desensitized to sin, thinking it is harmless, not realizing that every small compromise gives the enemy a foothold. He does not always come with an obvious attack. Often he comes in the form of distractions, temptations, and small deceptions that lead people further and further away from the truth. Those who are not aware of the battle will be unprepared to fight it. Ignorance is not an excuse, and neutrality is not an option. There is no middle ground in this war. Every person must choose a side. The forces of darkness seek to destroy, but the power of God is greater. The victory has already been won through Jesus Christ, but each person must decide whether they will walk in that victory or remain vulnerable to the attacks of the enemy. There are things in this world that carry more than just physical presence. They carry spiritual influence. Many people do not realize that certain objects in their homes and lives can become conduits for either light or darkness. These things may appear harmless on the surface, but the spiritual realm is real. And what we surround ourselves with matters. Some objects carry history, energy, and even spiritual attachments that can invite forces of darkness into our lives, hindering our faith and creating unnecessary struggles. Throughout history, various cultures have recognized the power that objects can hold. In the Bible, we see examples of objects that were dedicated to God and carried His presence, such as the Ark of the Covenant. But we also see objects that were associated with false gods and demonic practices, and God warned His people to remove them. When the Israelites entered the Promised Land, God commanded them to destroy idols and anything connected to pagan worship because these items carried spiritual influence. They were not just meaningless statues. They represented an allegiance to powers that opposed God. Many people today unknowingly keep items in their homes that are tied to darkness. These could be statues or symbols from false religions, books and artifacts linked to occult practices, or even objects that have been used in rituals. Some people collect these things as souvenirs, decorations, or even as gifts from friends. That does not belong. These objects can serve as open doors for the enemy to gain a foothold in someone's life, causing unrest, fear, confusion, and even spiritual oppression. But it is not just religious or occult objects that carry influence. There are other things that can subtly bring darkness into our lives. Movies, music, books, and even clothing that glorify sin, violence, or immorality can have an impact on our spirits. What we surround ourselves with shapes our thoughts, our emotions, and even our relationship with God. If we constantly expose ourselves to things that promote darkness, it becomes harder to walk in the light. Some people wonder why they feel distant from God, why they struggle with anxiety or depression, or why they keep falling into temptation. Yet they fail to see that their environment is part of the problem. Even items that are passed down through generations can carry spiritual weight. Some families have heirlooms connected to witchcraft, Freemasonry, or false religions, and they do not realize the history behind them. These things might seem like simple decorations or family treasures, but if they were once used in ungodly practices, they can still carry spiritual significance. It is important to pray and seek discernment about what we keep in our homes. God calls His people to be set apart, to remove anything that does not honor Him. When we choose to hold on to things that invite darkness, we make it harder for His presence to dwell fully in our lives. The enemy will take any opportunity he is given, and if we provide a foothold, he will use it to bring distraction, confusion, and destruction. That is why it is crucial to evaluate what we own, what we watch, what we listen to, and what we allow into our lives. Some people may dismiss this as superstition, but spiritual warfare is real. Many have testified that when they removed certain objects from their homes, they felt a difference. Peace was restored, spiritual battles became easier, and they were able to hear from God more clearly. This is not about fear. It is about wisdom. God desires us to walk in freedom. And part of that freedom comes from ensuring that nothing in our lives is giving the enemy a foothold. We must be intentional about what we allow into our homes and hearts. Idolatry is not just a thing of the past. It is alive and well today, often disguised in forms that many people fail to recognize. It is more than bowing before a statue. It is anything that takes the place of God in our hearts. And one of the most dangerous ways idolatry manifests is through objects, symbols, and practices that are tied to false gods, superstitions, or the occult. These things are not merely decorations or harmless traditions. They carry spiritual significance. They can create strongholds in a person's life, leading to spiritual bondage. From the earliest days of human civilization, people have worshipped false gods and engaged in rituals meant to gain power, prosperity, or protection. In the Bible, God repeatedly warned his people against idol worship. He commanded them not to carve images or bow down to any other gods. The reason was not just about obedience, it was about spiritual purity. Idolatry was never just an external act. It was a gateway for demonic influence. The Israelites struggled with this again and again. Whenever they turned to false gods, they found themselves oppressed, broken, and far from God. And the same is true today. Many people unknowingly bring idols and occult symbols into their homes and lives without understanding their spiritual impact. Statues of pagan deities, charms, talismans, and even artwork inspired by false religions can invite darkness. Some wear jewelry with occult symbols, thinking they are just fashionable designs, unaware that they originate from demonic practices. Others keep items like dream catchers, lucky charms, or astrology-based trinkets, believing they will bring good fortune or protection. But what they fail to see is that these things are not rooted in God's power. They come from traditions that deny him and open doors to the enemy. The occult is another dangerous trap that leads many into spiritual bondage. Items associated with witchcraft, sorcery, or divination, such as tarot cards, Ouija boards, spell books, and ritualistic objects are direct invitations for demonic forces to operate in a person's life. Many people engage with these things out of curiosity, not realizing that they are stepping into enemy territory. The devil does not need a full invitation. All he needs is a small. The moment a person begins to rely on these objects or participate in these practices, they are allowing forces of darkness to gain a foothold. Even some cultural and religious artifacts carry deep spiritual implications. Objects that have been dedicated to false gods or used in ancestral worship often carry spiritual ties that extend across generations. Some people find themselves struggling with unexplained fear, anxiety, or oppression, not realizing that the items they inherited or collected are part of the problem. The spiritual realm is real, and when something has been used for ungodly purposes, it does not lose its spiritual significance just because it is placed on a shelf or worn as an accessory. Entertainment is one of the most powerful influences in our world today. It shapes the way people think, feel, and behave. Music, movies, television shows, and video games are not just sources of amusement. They have the ability to mold hearts and minds. And while entertainment can be used for good, can also be a tool of corruption. What we listen to, what we watch, and what we engage with has a direct impact on our spiritual lives. Many people fail to realize that entertainment that glorifies darkness is not just harmless fun, but an open door to demonic influence. The Bible warns us to guard our hearts and minds because what we take in will ultimately affect who we become. Yet so much of today's entertainment is filled with messages that directly oppose God's truth. Music that promotes violence, immorality, drug use, or rebellion may seem like just a catchy tune, but the words and emotions behind it carry power. Repetitive exposure to these messages normalizes sin. Over time, people become more comfortable with the very things God calls them to avoid. Movies and television shows are no different. Many of the most popular films today glorify the occult, witchcraft, and demonic activity. Horror movies often depict supernatural forces as something thrilling or entertaining rather than the very real spiritual dangers they represent. Even seemingly innocent fantasy or sci-fi films sometimes introduce concepts that blur the line between good and evil, making it easy for audiences to accept and embrace things that are spiritually harmful. Video games, especially those that include extreme violence, sorcery, or demonic imagery, can also create an unhealthy spiritual atmosphere. Some games actively encourage players to take on roles of dark powers, cast spells, or participate in occult rituals. While many argue that it is just a game, the truth is that repeated exposure to these themes shapes a person's thoughts and emotions. The enemy does not need a physical object to enter someone's life. Sometimes, all he needs is an open mind, willing to entertain darkness. One of the biggest deceptions of the enemy is making sin look entertaining. He packages it in music, movies, and games in a way that makes people enjoy it without realizing they are being drawn away from God. The more people consume entertainment filled with lust, greed, violence, and rebellion, the more those things take root in their hearts. They may not immediately feel the effects, but over time they become numb to sin, more accepting of the world's ways, and less sensitive to the Holy Spirit's conviction. Entertainment is not neutral. It either draws us closer to God or pulls us away from Him. Many people struggle with spiritual oppression, anxiety, and fear, not realizing that the entertainment they consume is feeding those very things. What we allow into our minds and hearts determines what kind of atmosphere we create in our lives. If we constantly fill ourselves with darkness, we cannot expect to walk in the light. God calls His people to be set apart. That does not mean avoiding all entertainment, but it does mean being discerning about what we engage with. Instead of filling our minds with messages that corrupt the soul, we should seek entertainment that is uplifting, encouraging, and aligned with God's truth. The battle for our souls is not just fought in obvious places. It is often fought in the quiet moments when we choose what we watch, what we listen to, and what we allow to influence our hearts. The question is not whether entertainment affects us, but whether we will be wise enough to choose what brings life rather than what invites darkness. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must decide whom they will serve, whether they will allow the forces of darkness to remain or whether they will break free through the power of God. Many people live under the weight of spiritual bondage without even realizing it. They struggle with fear, depression, anxiety, and temptation, and they do not understand why they cannot seem to overcome these battles. The truth is, spiritual oppression often lingers because people have unknowingly invited it in through the things they allow in their lives, in their homes, and in their hearts. But the good news is this: no power of darkness is greater than the power of God. No chain is so strong that He cannot break it. Breaking free from spiritual bondage requires action. It is not enough to simply recognize the problem. We must take steps to remove every foothold the enemy has in our lives. That begins with repentance. True freedom comes when we acknowledge that we have allowed things into our lives that do not belong.